Hi. Welcome. We are going to get ready to start here in a moment. But we are very excited that you all have chosen to join us today to learn more about the ballot, about voting, about the things that matter to us. My name is Dr. Bradley, and I serve as the Chief Operating Officer here at Wiley College. And I also have the honor of working with the Heman Sweat Center. And so today we are celebrating the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. through a program that's very important to my heart around us reminding ourselves what does it mean to be able to have the right to vote, to be able to have the ballot, and to also making sure that we are reminded that people went to great lengths to make sure that we get the opportunity to vote. So with that being said, I welcome you to this Heman Sweat Center program in commemoration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am delighted that we could gather today to have this very important conversation. And so I turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Kiana White, who will provide more information about today's important program.
Good morning, Wiley College. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad that you all could join us today. Today, I want to, introduce my friend, a sister-in-law, Miss Staci Childs, who's going to expand on the importance of voting. Right now in Texas, all across the world, we have some primary elections that are coming up, and we just want to make sure that everyone's involved. So I want to introduce Miss Staci Childs. Miss Staci Childs is hailing from Atlanta, Georgia. She is a criminal defense attorney and a public speaker who currently resides in Houston, Texas. Ms. Childs is a two-time HBCU graduate, completing her undergraduate studies at Hampton University, and she received her Juris Doctor from Thurgood Marshall School of Law. Although Ms. Childs owns her own practice, Sunnyside Legal Clinic, she is devoted to the law. She would like to be defined by her love for people, students, and what students are learning. Staci also runs a nonprofit organization called Girl Talk University, where she strives to promote a positive self-image in girls and women. Ms. Childs is the author of Her Beautiful Day, a children's book written to encourage kids to be comfortable with who they are. It was in the Upward Bound program that Ms. Childs started her career. Prior to practicing law, Staci spent her time as a language art teacher. Because of her experiences as a teacher, community leader, and defense attorney, Ms. Childs has recently announced her candidacy for the Texas State Board of Education to represent District 4, reminding us that service may take many shapes and that you can make a difference in whatever career path you choose. I would like to turn it over to Ms. Childs.
Yay. Thank you, Dr. White, my sister-in-law, and hello, Wiley College. You guys don't understand how excited I am to be here. Ever since, and I know you guys hear this all the time being students at Wiley, ever since I watched The Great Debaters in 2007, it became and still is my favorite movie to this day. So I always pray and hope for the opportunity to be somehow affiliated with Wiley College. So when Dr. White called, I answered. So I am so privileged to be here amongst great students, great staff, and a great university or great college with such rich history and culture. Thank you. As Dr. White said, I am currently living in the beautiful, vibrant, and pretty lit city of Houston, Texas. But I would be remiss without speaking and paying homage to my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, where Dr. Martin Luther King is also from. In fact, we grew up very close to each other. He grew up on Auburn Avenue, and I grew up maybe 10 to 15 minutes away from that. And also, Dr. Martin Luther King went to the same high school my mom did. Of course, not at the same time, obviously, but they both went to Booker T. Washington High School in downtown Atlanta, which is the first Black high school for African Americans in Atlanta. So throughout my life, I've been proud to be a Black person. I've been proud to be educated. I've been proud to be who I am and be immersed in culture and history. And I've been taught to stand up for what I believe in and stand up for what's right. And I feel like that's something that you all embody too. That's probably what drew you to be students and staff at Wiley College. So let's get to the point. We're celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King today. We realize that this week is very important as it relates to voting, as it relates to elections. As you know, this is a year where a lot of elections are at stake. Some people are running for re-election. Some people, like myself, are running for election for the first time. So while this is happening, there are things going on in different states, such as Georgia, where I'm from, and Texas, where we all live. and voting rights are being changed. And some of this stuff can sneak up under your nose unless you really take the time to research and figure out what's going on. And when you find out what's going on, stand up and try to put a stop to it. I'm going to give you all some examples, okay? So in Georgia, they recently passed State Bill 202, right? So upon my research of State Bill 202, this basically allows the state government to take a review of whatever local election board they feel like they need to review. And if they feel like they haven't been doing things right, they can just disband this election board, right? So on one hand, it's like, well, that doesn't seem that bad. But at the same time, how is it that a state government that is partisan, a state government that's ran by one party, can dictate what happens with elections when elections are supposed to be nonpartisan, when elections are supposed to be fair for everybody? How can in Georgia, the Republicans are running the legislature now. How can the Republicans, or even the Democrats for that matter, dictate what happens with elections, right? So something needs to be done about Senate Bill 202, but if you don't know about it, it'll just slide up under your nose. So let's talk about Texas, where Senate Bill 1 was just passed. There's this uproar about mail-in ballots. Now, think to yourself, why would someone want to mail in a ballot? Maybe they're older, maybe they lack transportation, maybe due to COVID. COVID is still out there. Omicron, all the variants are out there, right? So you want to exercise your right to vote, but at the same time, if they're giving you this mail-in option, you want to use that mail-in option. If you don't use the same identifier you use when you register to vote, they can throw away your mail-in ballot. What do you mean, Staci? So if you registered to vote, even if you registered to vote 20 years ago and you used your driver's license to register to vote, if you don't use that same driver's license, if you try to identify yourself using the last four of your social or using some other identifier, they can throw away your mail-in ballot. It has to be the same way you registered to vote. You have to verify yourself in that same way. What if I don't remember how I verified myself? Oh, well, they can throw away your mail-in ballot. And this is really going to affect people in heavy populated urban metropolitan areas such as Harris County or such as Houston, where I live. And that heavily affects people that look like me, like Dr. White and some of you. So if you are really not taking the time to do your research and really not getting involved in the election process, things can change and it'll feel like something is happening to you, but it didn't have to happen to you if you would have gotten involved, right? So I feel like now is the time for you guys to use your voice, use your right to vote. Please use your right to vote. Because as the first professor said, a lot of people did everything they could for us to have this right. So please utilize that right and figure out what's happening where you live specifically so that you can make a difference, okay? So let's talk about me. Enough of the history of election and what's going on in current events. As Dr. White said, I used to be an English teacher and now I practice law full time. And even though I'm not in the classroom anymore, I still work with students through my nonprofit. But it wasn't until I had these repeat encounters with my clients that I felt like something needs to happen with education, okay? And I'll give you guys a short, quick example of what happened to me recently. Recently, I was in court. I was handling something with a client. Everything went well. And I saw a man talking about probation with the judge. And the judge was telling him very clear, you either do this or your probation will get revoked. And I'm assuming that the guy didn't understand what the word revoked meant. And to all of us, all of you bright Wiley College students, of course, the word revoke is an easy thing. You learned that when you were a kid, right? But this guy did not understand what was happening. So he opted for the judge to revoke his probation. So I, being who I am, was in uproar. And I ran to the judge. I said, please, let me just talk to him for a second before you take him into custody. And when I asked the guy, do you understand what you just did? He was like, no, I don't understand. Please help. This really infuriated me because this person was an adult making very adult decisions, but without the knowledge he knew to make those decisions, okay? And I feel like there should be a base level of literacy in math, literacy with vocabulary, and just education you should have before you leave the 12th grade. So that is what prompted me to run for office. No, you don't have to be a perfect person to run for office. As a lot of us may not be willing to disclose, I was jammed up many years ago before I started teaching, before I went to law school. I was arrested before. I don't have a clean record. I even remember being in the police car praying like, Lord, please don't let this mess up my future in the law or future helping people and future politics. And the police officer himself said, just get it together and you'll remember this conversation. And here I am 10 or 12 years later. So you don't have to have a perfect story to run for office. You don't have to have a perfect story to be a teacher or a lawyer or whatever your heart's desire. But you need to find what lights your fire. You need to find what you're passionate about, and you need to go forth as hard as you can and as best you can for your life. For me, people are what inspire me. I love people. I love helping people. I love to see people flourish. So I'm going to go forth in the best way that I can. And if I could be of any help to you, I'll make sure that Dr. White gives you my information. If you want to talk offline, if you want to help with my campaign, I would love it. Even if you don't live in District 4, you can make some phone calls for me. But please, 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 ladies and gentlemen, just remember to exercise your right to vote. Please honor Dr. King's legacy. And please don't think you have to be a perfect person to help your community. You don't. You just have to have the passion.
Thank you so much, Ms. Childs, for that. I do want to open it up for a couple of QAs. I have a couple of questions, and if anyone is attending with us, if you have a couple of questions, please do not hesitate to enter your questions into the chat, and we'll make sure to answer them. So I want to start off about speaking to the college students. We talked about your career in education and going into the law. Your career path as an attorney is much different from mine. I knew from the beginning, like I came to Wiley College, like I'm going to be in this criminal justice program. I'm going to go to law school and I'm going to be a lawyer. But you, it was very different. You went to Hampton University. You started the Upward Bound program. You said, I'm going to be a teacher. I want to affect change in that way. And then something happened in the classroom that you said, I'm going to go to law school so that I can affect change. Mm-hmm. Is there any advice that you would give to the students who may be struggling with defining what service looks like for them?
Sure. Some advice that someone gave me that was very helpful is if you look back from childhood all the way to where you are in your life now, your body and your spirit naturally keep going back to the same thing over and over again. And for me, I've been wanting to be the group leader and the teacher since I was a kid. I've been wanting to be like the counselor and the helper since I was a kid, right? So it was natural for me to want to go into education. But I also had this undeniable fire to like see people treated fairly. So while I was teaching, when I saw unfair things going on, everybody else was like, I don't see it. It doesn't bother my paycheck. I'm just going to keep it moving. But for me, that wasn't enough because I don't like for people to be treated unfairly, even especially kids. Mm-hmm. So I transitioned out of the classroom into what I'm doing now. But if you just take a look at your life and think about what you just naturally keep gravitating to, you'll know what you need to be doing.
Okay. And then getting back to our voting rights, because we do have some primary elections coming up where we're voting for our judges, we're voting for those individuals such as yourself who will represent us in the educational fields. What, as an attorney, you practice on both sides of the bench. So you've seen something in the criminal courts where you mentioned the guy's probation was getting revoked. You've also seen something in civil courts in family law cases where maybe a situation may have been unfair. Can you expand on the importance of voting and knowing who we are electing into these positions?
Yes, it's very important. And to be honest, when I was in my 20s, I always voted when I had the opportunity to, but sometimes I would just say, well, who's the Democrat or who has the nicest sounding name? And I would just kind of vote randomly. But now I find it very important because I realize how much of an effect these elections have on people's lives. As an attorney, and I won't disclose any names, of course, there are certain courts where I kind of can tell how a judge is going to rule. There are some judges, even though they take this oath to be impartial, I guess because of human nature or their experience, are not impartial. And we should not be continuing to re-elect judges who can't be fair. And unless you do the research and figure out who's running or run yourself, you'll be pigeonholed into continuing to elect these people that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So it's extremely important.
because I find it many times in my practice in the law, although we say judges are just supposed to be the gatekeepers of the law, they sometimes can play the role of God.
That's right.
And those roles are, to me, it's sometimes like you don't understand what's going on, and because of this, like you're just like, I wish I could have done something, but I just want to let everybody know the importance, because now is our time to actually do something.
That's
in
right.
every county, someone is running for something. So you may not be in Harrison County, you may be in Dallas County, you may be in Fort Bend County, but wherever you are, college students, whenever you go home, these are the people who are going to determine your fate if something happened. Everybody always want to think criminal, but it's a lot that goes on in the civil courts. You have more experience in the civil courts, because I really don't practice in civil. So you've done more practice in civil than I've done. But in my short experience, I find that it's very important, because although we say that these are just our gatekeepers, they do have a lot of power in their pen.
They do. And I'm just going to say something really quick. I've had consultations with clients, and especially dads. Let's talk about family law and custody. And the dads will already have a case pending, and I'll say, what court is your case in? Who's your judge? And when they tell me the name, I'm like, oh, I know you're going to have a hard time, because this judge is known to favor moms. That shouldn't be a reputation that a judge should have. Mm-hmm. You should just hear the facts, hear the evidence, and rule blindly. That's what you're supposed to do, but that's not always what happens. And I'm not blaming every judge for this, but it does happen from time to time, and it affects people's lives and their right to see their kids. This is really important stuff, but if we're not voting, then, we can't really see it change.
Okay, thank you. So, in switching focus again, like we're both HBCU grads and we ride for the HBCU. Everybody should attend the HBCU, because you will learn something. If nothing else, it will teach you to be more of your business. It'll wake and give you your call to action. So I know that some people will argue that you shouldn't go to an HBCU grad, and by you being an HBCU graduate and attendee, you may miss out on various opportunities because of what's going on in your resumes. So what advice would you give, I guess? What advantage do you have? For instance, I know that between yourself and me, like you had the privilege of interning for Barack Obama's cabinet, and I had the privilege of interning for the Department of Homeland Security. Both of these opportunities we received because we attended these HBCUs. Right. So what is a key advantage other than that, would you say, is would say you should attend this HBCU, stick with this HBCU, and you'll learn something?
Well, first of all, we're both lawyers, so the facts are the facts. The facts are more people that go to HBCUs have a greater likelihood of becoming CEOs, of making more money, and owning their own businesses. Those are the facts. That's just not my opinion, right? So if you do your research as to HBCU graduates versus people that go to PWIs, you'll see the proof is in the pudding, right? But I think we give too much credit to the school and we don't put enough pressure on the person. Mm-hmm. The reason why I was chosen to work in the Domestic Policy Council for the Obama White House was because of me. It wasn't because I went to Thurgood Marshall School of Law or Hampton. It was because of me, because I manifested it. I prayed on it. I put myself out there. I applied a lot of times and got rejected. But finally, I was accepted and I continued to work hard. And I think if people just take a step back and put all that energy that they're putting in the school choice back into themselves, they'll get whatever opportunity they want.
Okay. Ms. Woodard has a question. She wants, and we may have already elaborated on this. I'm sure that we did talk about it, but let's talk about the importance of down the ballot voting, actually going through and voting for everything, like every person, and not just saying like, I'm going to be all Democrat, I'm going to be all Republican, like making sure that you understand what's going on.
So I'm going to be very transparent. I do a lot of down the ballot voting because there are a lot of races in my past where I didn't know any of the candidates. And I feel like, generally speaking, the Democratic candidate will most likely align with what I care about in terms of my economic and social interests. So that's why I've done it in the past. But that doesn't work for primaries. So let's talk about my race. I'm running against 4 other people. We're all Democrats. So then what do you do? Right. So you can do that down ballot voting. If you don't know anyone else, just figure out what party aligns more with who you are. But I think it's very important to do the extra research to figure out, what are these races? What do they mean? What do they impact? Who are the people? Because if you vote in a primary, there may be all Democrats running, and then who are you going to choose in that instance?
Okay. I agree with you. I also think that it's important that when you're doing your down the ballot voting, that you actually go through and you select who you're wanting to vote for. Like, that's very important, because not doing that can actually end up in your vote not being counted for a certain person that you may have wanted to vote for. So that's also an important thing when we're thinking about going down the ballot and checking these boxes. Make sure that we're actually checking for a person, because by not checking, it's like you're made sometimes not casting your vote with
Right.
all of the changes that are going on with our voting rights and how strenuous it's being for us to vote. So I want to make a point for that. Okay. And now we're going to let's talk about your nonprofit organization and just service, because service is very important to me. Service is very important here at Wiley College. On the behalf of the Heman Sweat Center, we want to encourage the students to be a part. Like, service for me may look different for service for you, but be a part. You yourself, you have Girl Talk University and you have Sunnyside Legal Clinic, where you often assist individuals, lower income individuals, with free aid. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me, or I guess expand on how you prepare for both and making sure that your service goals are met for each specific clinic organization that you run?
Sure. So for my nonprofit is more of my labor of love. So I'm not getting paid for that right now. But what I've done is I found like-minded people who are really invested in making sure girls and women have confidence. And they're like, you know what? I care about it just as much as you do. As long as we fulfill the mission, the money will come. And that's what's starting to happen. So I've built out a team so that when I'm not available to do the Girl Talk related things, they take over. And shout out to the Girl Talk University team. They've been doing a good job with that. In terms of Sunnyside Legal, I do charge for my services, generally speaking, at the rate or a little bit lower than most attorneys with my experience will charge. But I do highly promote these community events once or twice a month, because I feel like if you just had the knowledge, you won't need a lawyer. If you just knew to do a will before your grandmama or someone passes away, you won't be fighting about it a year later or 2 years after her death, right? So we really feel passionate about giving the community awareness for free, because we think that it'll save the community money later.
Okay, so you brought up something very important, and it's the team. Like, to me, when you said I have my team, I know that we all talk about it, and I know that we're like, you create your teams, and because your team is your foundation. So it's very important that when you're doing this community service, that you don't try to do everything by yourself, because you will burn out. Like, you will burn out.
Before you go to the next person, we really need to talk about that team aspect, because I've noticed, especially in African American communities, sometimes we work in silos where it's like, I don't want to ask because of pride or ego. She doing something different. She too busy for me. But it's like, yeah, how do you know unless you ask? So I just want to say, if you need help, please ask. Please reach out to that person. Please don't scroll past their picture or their post when you're interested without saying something, because it could be some connections made.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Ashley would like to know, what's the process for starting to run for office?
Thank you for that question. Well, firstly, I would say, if you're interested in a certain office, just Google it. I Google everything. And Google is not to necessarily be trusted for its validity, but at least it'll steer you in the right direction. So I would do that. But if you don't even know what you want to run for, I would take that step back, like I said before, and figure out, what issues do I really care about? Honestly, when it comes to taxes and being a comptroller or running the money of a city, those things are important, but it doesn't light my fire like kids knowing how to read does, right? So when you find out what you're passionate about, type in those issues and figure out what seats or what positions most closely align with your passion. But after that, I would look up organizations that help people run for office. For example, another one is called runforsomething.org. They help people under 40 run for office. They have all the stats, the data, the numbers. They'll even give you money to back your campaign. There are a lot of organizations out there that will help you and teach you when you don't know. But again, you have to have the lack of ego and the strength to be able to ask those questions.
Okay, and then can you repeat that site one more time?
Yeah.
Runforoffice.org.
It's called runforsomething.org.
Runforsomething.org.
Mhm.
Okay. So if you want to runforsomething.org can give you a good start, and they'll help you with the backing. But of course, like Ms. Chow said, never be afraid to ask for help. Like, we, as your college family, campus family, we are here. Wiley College is rich in history. You have strong alumni, so please do not hesitate to ask for help. I wanted to go back to the voting rights just a bit, and knowing that, like, and getting involved in our communities. I know that you said that if you want to run for office, you can do for runforsomething.org. If you're in your community, you can Google it to see what's going around. But for the person who's saying, I want to get involved, but I do not know where to start, what advice would you give for that person?
You mean for a person who wants to get involved, but they don't even know to like access the internet?
Yeah, like a person who, like, not just college students, right? Like, I want to reach everyone, because voting is something that everyone is affected by. So I want to know that, like, for those individuals who are out there, like, I know that you can go to your community centers. I know that sometimes, like, old school, but pick up a newspaper. Like, cities still do release newspapers, and they let you know what's going around, what events are happening. But is there any other way, like, if, like, you know, maybe you can go to the college campuses around your local neighborhood? I know here at the Heman Sweat Center, we are focused on social good. So whatever events that are going on in our communities, we would like to be a part of them. And, you know, if you would like to help us out, we would like that help as well. So as far as like an individual who may not know where to start when it comes to, I just want to be a part, because being a part is something different. Like, it could be money. I just want to be a part. What would you say?
You know, one thing that I learned since I've been running this campaign, I just started, is going to the local civic club, because civic clubs, or people in the civic clubs, and that's CIVIC, like civics in high school. The people in the civic clubs are like gatekeepers of knowledge. They know everything that's happening in the community. They know who has money, who doesn't. They know when land is getting changed around the area, right? So that is something that I learned. You don't even have to have access to the internet to go to a civic club meeting, figure out who's who. You'll figure out who runs the land, who runs the money, who runs the neighborhood. And not only that, I would just reach out to people in your community. You know who the most prominent pastor is. You know who the police officers are, or at least you should. You know who the teachers are. Get connected with as many people in your community as possible. And before you take the leap to run for office, listen to some of the things that are going on in your community, and let the community guide you in the right direction. But definitely civic clubs is another place where you can find information.
Okay. And then my last thing, I know that we talk a lot about service being a lifetime commitment, and making sure that we're actually being a active participant in the change that we would wish to see in the world. Do you have any final words that you would like to leave with the students and encourage them to go on the way?
Yeah, I think that service is the rent we pay to live on earth. That's what they tell us. And I think I had initially a lot of, I don't want to use the word guilt, but I had a lot of resentment or regret around taking this route to community and being a servant leader. Because when you go to law school, right, you're supposed to choose the big lucrative jobs where you're making millions of dollars so that your family can be secure. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But for me, I feel so passionate about people and what I want to do. What I decided to do is live a life of service and know that the money will come. Know that I will be secure and I will be satisfied. And I sleep well knowing that I give to the community every day. So I would just urge all the students, you know, whatever path you choose, whether it's law or medicine or starting your own business, please remember to be service oriented, because I think I've been getting a lot of blessings this past year, and it's because I've been so service oriented my entire life. So it's okay to go after that lucrative job, but remember to do your service.
Get back. Okay. So before we leave today, I do want to let everyone know that we do have some important dates as it comes to voting in Texas specifically. I do want to let you guys know that on January 31st, that is the last day to register to vote in Texas. That is very important. Please make sure that you are checking your status. Make sure that you are registered to vote. And that everything is updated. Like Ms. Childs informed you, sometimes when we are doing these mail-in ballots, the way that you mail in your ballot is the same way that you must register to vote. So just check on that, see how everything is going. On February the 14th, that's when our early voting starts. Don't wait until the last day. Make sure that you get out there and vote the day of February 14th. I cannot wait. It's Valentine's Day. It's Valentine's Day, but Valentine's Day is a day of love. Get out there and make your vote count.
Today is the last day to register to vote, though, if I'm not mistaken, for the primary.
Today?
Right? I think it's
January 31st. January 31st.
Oh, 31st? Okay, I'm about to say, I know it's some deadline today. So make sure you're going to your county website to look at the deadlines because there is some deadline today.
Okay, yes. So then February the 18th for mail-in ballots. So February the 18th is that's when your county must receive your mail-in ballot. And then March 1st, that's our Texas primary. So that's when voting happens. But of course, we're going to all be productive citizens. We're going to do our part. We're going to try to get to that ballot on February the 14th if you're in Texas. If you're not in Texas, I will look it up and I will pass out that information along. If you would like for me to look that up for you, please do not hesitate to leave us a chat or put it in the chat and I will make sure to get out to you. I know that voting is very important. Dr. King marched so that we could have this right. Please, let's honor his legacy and do what we need to do.
Amen.
If nothing else, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Bradley.
Dr. Bradley is just so excited about our conversation. That's why she was waiting. She was
I had to be put back into the chat, so I do apologize. I am just delighted that you have spent time with us today here at Wiley College, and thank you both for bringing this conversation, this important conversation to our campus. On behalf of our President Herman J. Felton, I speak to you on behalf and just say thank you, thank you, thank you. It is important as we continue to celebrate and commemorate the life of Dr. King that we are reminded that Wiley is holy ground, that there is history here, there's a story here, and each one of you helped to make sure that story continues on. The ancestors have given us a gift, and we are reminded of that gift each day through the work that you all are doing. So thank you so much, and thank you all for joining us today. On behalf of the Heman Sweat Center, thank you as well.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it. Good luck, students. Make sure you vote.